So there was this girl who used to ride at my barn. We'll call her Siobhan. Siobhan at the time used to work at a hotel, which of course it wasn't really the nicest hotel, but it definitely wasn't the worst. What she constantly do in her job is to pretty much do housekeeping and do what she can, such as tidy up rooms after guests have checked out, etc. Most of her time, her job was pretty quiet, as she didn't really have anything fiasco or anything really abnormal or crazy happening to her. After this story, though, she has her doubts on it being quietest, as she was pretty much walking around on a hotel floor, doing housekeeping. She ended up looking to realize that there was someone's towel lying on the floor. At first, she thought that one of the guests could have dropped it, but she wasn't really too sure as to why the towel was there. She looked down the hall and noticed that there was no one there, but she felt like she was being watched. She headed over to that area and looked to see if maybe someone was behind her, but she didn't see anyone. She even called out if somebody was there, but there was no one there to be seen. She ended up looking around and ended up going back to doing what she was doing, since she couldn't find anyone, seeing that maybe they were just playing a trick or something else. As she continued to do her work, however, she ended up looking over to see that there was another towel on the ground. She picked up the towel and placed it where she would pick up towels at, and placed it on the cart, and she ended up knocking on the nearest door. However, she had heard no response from that door, so she thought that the people there were busy. She knocked again, but there was still no answer, and she was getting quite concerned as why someone wasn't answering the door. She ended up unlocking the door, but absolutely found no one in there. She ended up looking around, thinking that there could have been someone there, but she couldn't find anyone. As she looked around, she saw that there was more towels on the ground. Confused, she was just wondering as to where these towels were coming from and why they were on the floor. As she looked, she ended up looking in the bathroom to see that there was a man. This man looked to be maybe in his mid-40s or something, but he looked really much older, and he was pretty much not taking his attention to Siobhan. Siobhan obviously stepped back as quiet as she could, and she headed back to the front of the lobby. Once she told the security desk that there was someone in a certain room, they went in there, and Siobhan waited for a few minutes, wondering as if to what was this man's intentions were if he noticed that she was there. That was something that really terrified her. It wasn't until a few minutes later when the security guard comes out with a man in handcuffs along with the police. They asked if she knew this man, and she said she didn't know him, and she explained that she had been finding towels on the floor, and she wasn't sure as to what was there. As it turns out, this man had been leaving towels, trying to lead unsuspecting housekeeping people into a room where he had planned to rob them and do God knows what. I don't know what he would have done to Siobhan if she had not gone to security. He could have robbed her, could have do God knows what. But since then, she is now careful as to who or what is inside the hotel rooms. And she wasn't sure as to why this guy was leaving towels, with the exception of leading housekeeping people to get robbed or something. But nothing like this has ever happened since, and she hopes it stays that way. Now, one of my friends at the time of this story was going to a convention that was in Toronto. Now, my friend at the time, we'll call her Charlotte, and she was there with her boyfriend as well as two of her friends. They wanted to go to this convention called Anime North for a while. While it is a fun place to do stuff, it definitely wasn't the worst. They had never been to a convention at the time before, so they were looking forward to their first time there. They got in and found a hotel room, and apparently they have been doing lots of looking around and stuff. Most of the time they were even having a fun time, but it wasn't until maybe a few minutes later when something went terribly wrong. However, it was during the first night though, and for the first night, nothing like this abnormal or crazy has happened. But however, it wasn't until maybe a few minutes later when something was going on. Now, I wasn't really too sure, and neither was Charlotte, as to what it was, but it wasn't until the second day, while they were at the convention. As they were at the convention, Charlotte decided to take a step outside to get some air, as she wasn't really feeling good on the second night. As she stepped out for a brief moment, she ended up looking down the hallway. Thinking that there was no one there, but there was someone there waving at her. She was confused for a second and wasn't sure if there was someone that she knew was down there. But whatever it was, it definitely wasn't saying anything. It didn't even look to be acknowledged as to who was there. It definitely didn't seem normal. She ended up calling out if someone was really there, but of course, this person didn't act like she acknowledged them. It definitely was really strange, but she ended up staring what seemed to be like a couple of minutes. It wasn't until maybe a few minutes later where Charlotte went back in and told her boyfriend that she saw someone outside. Of course, Kyle thought that maybe she was just imagining things, but Charlotte said she wasn't imagining things at all. Kyle stepped out, but he didn't see anyone out there. So he said she might have been imagining things and that she was just paranoid. It wasn't until the middle of the night, I think around maybe 1 a.m, Charlotte got up and went outside to check on something. As she was checking on her car, she ended up looking at the opposite of the hallway to see that there's this figure. The figure was staring at her and definitely was giving an unsettling smile. She called out if that was really someone there, but whatever it was didn't respond and didn't even recognize that she was there. He basically just continued to stare at her and making Charlotte really uncomfortable. She ended up stepping up forward, asking if the person needed help, but the person didn't reply. Instead, she let out a laughter and then turned around and ran in the opposite direction. Of course, Charlotte tried to catch up with the person, but he was gone by the time she reached that end, and looked around the other hallway but couldn't see anyone. So she ended up telling Kyle about this the third day, which was the last day of the convention they were staying in, and she told him about what she saw. Now, obviously, they weren't really too sure as to who that person was, and they had thoughts on either going to the police or talking with the hotel staff about this figure, but they decided to let it go as it wouldn't be worth it. I think what Charlotte and Charlotte had experienced that day was completely paranormal. So, this actually happened to one of my friends when he went to a furry convention. This furry convention was taking place in Ottawa, and at the time of the story, he obviously had questions and stuff that still linger in his mind. I'm gonna call him by the name Jack for the sake of the story. Jack was pretty much maybe 19 or 20, and he had been wanting to go to this convention in Ottawa. Keep in mind that this was taking place in 2018, so Jack decided to go with his girlfriend to the convention in Ottawa. It was a furry convention since he and his girlfriend really like the furry community, despite them not having any fursuits. They went there on the first day, and it went pretty well. They met some nice people, got some pictures, and even just chilled with people that they knew and even relaxed. However, it wasn't until the first night when something strange began happening. Now, Jack woke up in the middle of the night, and obviously, as he was heading to the bathroom, he ended up hearing what sounded like loud banging coming from the outside of his door, of the hotel room door. At first, he thought that it could have been an emergency, so he ended up opening the door to see absolutely no one there. It was really odd, but he thought that maybe it was someone ding-dong ditching, so he closed the door and went back to sleep. Fast forward to about maybe 5 in the morning when Jack's girlfriend woke up to use the bathroom. As she was using the bathroom, she heard loud banging, followed by a scream coming from the other side of the door. She obviously was startled by it and ended up looking through the peephole to see if there was someone there. But as she did that, there was absolutely no one at the door, and this actually kind of spooked her since she heard the screaming, but there was no one there. She told Jack about this, and Jack ended up looking for himself, but they couldn't find anyone there. Before they headed off to the convention area, they ended up calling the lobby and explaining about the situation, and they said they would handle it. Fast forward to the next night. This is when things started getting really weird. As Jack was brushing his teeth getting ready for bed, it was around close to midnight when he ended up hearing what seemed to be like scratching coming from the door. He went over to look to see if someone was there, but he couldn't find anyone through the peephole. He opened the door and looked up and down the hallway, but couldn't see anyone or anything could have made the scratching noise. He ended up calling out if someone was doing it to stop, but there was no reply or response. He closed the door and continued to do what he was doing. Now, this was until the middle of the night when Jack ended up looking up to see that there was a person standing near his bedside of his bed. At first, he obviously didn't even acknowledge it, but when he did, he obviously couldn't even make any facial features or any clothing features that this figure was wearing. Apparently, he was just staring at him and his girlfriend, although his girlfriend was asleep. His girlfriend woke up and asked Jack why he was up, but of course she didn't see anyone, but Jack said he saw someone sitting on the bench or the couch not far from where the bed was. She ended up looking, but she couldn't find him, and she didn't even see what Jack was talking about. They ended up alerting the security of the hotel about it, and the hotel did a quick search, but they absolutely couldn't find anyone there. Whatever it was definitely paranormal, and of course Jack is still not sure as to who that person was, if it really was real. It could have been something paranormal, or it could have been sleep paralysis. Jack and his girlfriend don't even know. They still to this day even wonder and question what was it that they actually saw, and was it the same figure making those noises outside of the hotel room? That was something that they have yet to have answers for.